May 1944, the island of Brač, off the coast of Yugoslavia. German mortars are raining down. 6 British commandos lie dead or dying. And in the middle of this hell, one man stands playing bagpipes. The Germans advancing toward him think he's lost his mind. They're about to capture the only Allied soldier left alive. His name is Jack Churchill. And this is not even close to the craziest thing he's done in this war. While the rest of the world fought World War II with machine guns, tanks and bombs, one British officer charged into battle with a sword, a longbow and a set of Scottish bagpipes. He captured 42 enemy soldiers with nothing but a blade. He escaped from a Nazi concentration camp. He killed men with arrows while bullets flew past his head. And he did it all because he believed in one simple rule. Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. That was his actual philosophy. Not a joke, not bravado. That's how Lieutenant Colonel John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill actually fought the most modern war in human history. You've probably never heard this story. That's because it sounds completely made up. No screenwriter would dare put this in a movie. Too unrealistic, they'd say. Too over the top. But every single thing you're about to hear actually happened. It's all documented. Military records, war diaries, eyewitness accounts, medals awarded for actions so insane they had to be real because nobody would believe fiction this wild. This is the true story of Mad Jack Churchill, the bagpipe-playing, sword-swinging, arrow-shooting maniac who became the most unbelievable soldier of World War II. But before we get to the battles, the captures, and the impossible escapes, we need to understand something important. Jack Churchill wasn't born into war. He wasn't raised in some medieval castle dreaming of knights and glory. He came from a very normal British colonial family. And that's what makes his story even more remarkable. This man chose to become a legend. He decided that modern warfare was too impersonal, too distant, too lacking in what he called proper military spirit. So he brought back the old ways. And somehow, impossibly, it worked. September 16th, 1906. Colombo, British Ceylon. That's Sri Lanka today. Jack Churchill was born into the kind of family that built the British Empire. His father, Alec Fleming Churchill, worked as a district engineer in the Ceylon civil service. Respectable job, good posting. The Churchill family had been in colonial administration for generations. Jack's grandfather had held the same position before his father. This was a family that understood duty, service, and the rigid structure of British imperial life. Young Jack grew up in that world of rules and expectations and proper British behaviour, and then he spent the rest of his life gleefully smashing every single one of those expectations into pieces. The family didn't stay in Ceylon long after Jack was born. They moved back to England, settling in Dormansland, Surrey. Normal English countryside, quiet village life. Then in 1910, when Jack was just 4 years old, the family packed up again and moved to British Hong Kong. His father had been appointed Director of Public Works, another promotion, another posting. Jack spent his early childhood moving between countries, experiencing different cultures, seeing how the British Empire operated from the inside. He had 2 brothers, Thomas Bell Lindsay Churchill, born in 1907, and Robert Alec Farquhar Churchill, born in 1911 in Hong Kong. All 3 brothers would end up serving in World War II. All 3 would become known for extraordinary bravery. But Jack would become the legend. 1917. The family returned to England for good. Jack was 11 years old. The First World War was still raging across Europe, and Britain was a country transformed by total war. Young Jack saw the soldiers, heard the stories, absorbed the culture of military heroism that dominated British life. He was sent to King William's College on the Isle of Man for his education, a traditional boarding school, the kind of place designed to produce proper British gentlemen and military officers. Jack learned the curriculum, he followed the rules. But something else was developing inside him, a fascination with history, with old battles, with the way warriors used to fight before gunpowder changed everything. After King William's College, there was only one logical path for a young man from Jack's background: the Royal Military College at Sandhurst, Britain's elite officer training academy. He enrolled and graduated in 1926 at the age of 20. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Manchester Regiment, a solid infantry regiment with a long history. Jack Churchill was now officially a British Army officer. His military career had begun, and for the next decade it would be completely, absolutely, mind-numbingly boring. He was posted to Burma with the Manchester Regiment, colonial garrison duty. The kind of posting where nothing happens for months at a time. You guard things, you drill, you maintain discipline, you deal with paperwork. For most officers, this was just the job. Necessary, but dull. For Jack Churchill, it was torture. He needed adventure. He needed challenge. He needed something that would test him physically and mentally. So he found his own ways to create excitement. He bought a Zenith motorcycle and decided to ride it 1,500 miles across the Indian subcontinent, alone, through terrain that would challenge experienced riders. He crashed into a water buffalo at one point, got back on the bike, kept going. That was Jack Churchill at 20 years old, already proving that normal people's definition of danger didn't apply to him. But Burma had one thing that caught Jack's attention: time. Lots of empty time. Time to develop skills that had nothing to do with modern military training. He learned to play the bagpipes, not because he had Scottish heritage, not because it was required. He just thought bagpipes were magnificent and decided to master them. He also started seriously practicing archery. Not casual target shooting. Real, committed, competitive level archery. He studied technique. He built strength. He spent hours every day perfecting his draw, his aim, his release. Other officers thought he was eccentric. Jack didn't care what other officers thought. By 1936, Jack Churchill had been in the army for 10 years. He was 30 years old, and he was done. Completely done with peacetime military service. The garrison duty was driving him insane. There were no wars to fight, no campaigns to join, no way to prove himself in actual combat. So he did something that shocked his fellow officers. He resigned his commission and left the British Army. His military career appeared to be over before it had really begun. But Jack Churchill wasn't giving up on adventure. He was just looking for it somewhere else. He moved to Nairobi, Kenya, and took a job as a newspaper editor. Colonial Kenya was still wild territory in the 1930s. British settlers, African communities, big game hunting, and the rough edge of empire. Jack loved it. But he also kept up with his unusual hobbies, the bagpipes, the archery. And now he added something new: male modelling. Yes, Lieutenant Colonel Jack Churchill, future war hero and Nazi fighting maniac, worked as a male model in the 1930s. He had the look: tall, lean, angular features, intense eyes. He posed for advertisements and catalogues. He made decent money. And he absolutely did not care that it was considered unusual for a former British Army officer to be modelling clothes. But the archery was becoming more than a hobby. Jack was getting genuinely good. Competition level good. National team good. In 1938, he entered a military piping competition at the Aldershot Tattoo and took second place. Then, in 1939, something incredible happened. Jack Churchill was selected to represent Great Britain at the World Archery Championships in Oslo, Norway. He competed against the best archers in the world. He placed 26th. Not bad for someone who'd taught himself in the jungles of Burma and the ranges of Kenya. But more importantly, he proved something to himself. He could take an ancient weapon and compete at the highest level. He could master skills that most people considered obsolete. And then, in September 1939, everything changed. Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Britain declared war. The world was about to be consumed by the largest, most destructive conflict in human history. And Jack Churchill, who had resigned from the army 3 years earlier because there were no wars to fight, immediately rushed to rejoin. He was 33 years old. Most men that age with his background would take a safe staff position, training duty maybe, logistics, something behind the lines. Not Jack Churchill. He wanted combat. He wanted action. He wanted to find out if all those years of training with swords and bows and ancient warrior skills meant anything in a modern war. The British Army welcomed him back. They needed experienced officers. They commissioned him back into the Manchester Regiment with his previous rank. And in early 1940, Lieutenant Jack Churchill shipped out to France as part of the British Expeditionary Force. He was finally going to war. And he made sure he went properly dressed. He packed his service rifle and pistol like every other officer, but he also packed something else: a Scottish basket-hilted broadsword, a longbow and a quiver of arrows, and his beloved bagpipes. His fellow officers saw him loading this equipment and thought he'd lost his mind. "This is World War II," they said. "We have machine guns, artillery, tanks. What are you going to do with a sword?" Jack Churchill just smiled. "You'll see," he told them. "You'll see." He had no idea that within weeks he would use that longbow to kill a man, that the sword would become his trademark, that the bagpipes would become a weapon of psychological warfare, that he would capture dozens of enemy soldiers using only medieval weapons, that he would escape from concentration camps and survive impossible battles and become the most legendary soldier in British commando history. All he knew was that he was finally going to war, and he was going to fight it his way, the old way, the warrior's way. The stage was set, the weapons were ready, and Mad Jack Churchill was about to show the German Wehrmacht what real fear looked like. Not from bullets, not from bombs, but from a man who didn't belong in their century, a man who fought like he'd stepped out of a history book, a man who was about to prove that sometimes the old ways worked better than anyone expects. The war was just beginning, and Jack Churchill was ready.